Nassau County legislator from the 5th District, and I'm joined by Carrie Salage, legislator from the 2nd District, and Ellen Birnbaum, legislator from the 10th. I'll be a little boring at the beginning, but then I promise it'll be more interesting. First, a little map. County legislature is made up of 19 members, each representing 70,000 constituents. But hundreds of millions of dollars worth of contracts are voted on by just the 7 members of the legislature's Rules Committee. That's about 1/3 of the whole body. So what does that mean? That means that 840,000 Nassau County residents have zero say on how millions of their tax dollars are spent. The legislators who represent these constituents can't even ask on-the-record questions about the contract. See, that's why he's elected. And these 840,000 residents have no way to hold accountable legislators who do vote on multi-million-dollar contracts because they can't vote for or against them. That is not democracy, and it's against the founding principles of our representative republic. These 7 Rules Committee members' votes, of course, affect all of Nassau County residents, and of course, all of Nassau County's taxpayers vote for these contracts. From really big decisions such as the deal to privatize the Nassau County sewers, to the more pedestrian, day-to-day decisions, like a $5 million contract that was just approved earlier this month for fixing traffic lights. This bill, which we filed today in the clerk's office, would allow the entire legislative body, all 19 members, to vote on contracts of $3 million or more, after approval by the Rules Committee. This will give every legislator an opportunity to vet these big contracts, ask tough questions, and vote. And it will allow each legislator's constituents more opportunity to hold them accountable. And that will only make our government more transparent and more worthy of trust. This is not a partisan issue. This has been the way it's always been under Republican and Democratic majorities. So let's not point fingers. And let's begin to restore the people's trust in government with just one step today. The county charter, which is really our constitution, is not a perfect document. It needs some editing. As Aaron Burr says in the hit play Hamilton, the Constitution's a mess. To which Hamilton responds, so it needs amendments. So let's amend our charter, our Constitution, to make sure the public's will is done. Perrier?
Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank my colleague, Laura Curran from the 5th District. My name is Carrie Salage, legislator from the 3rd District. I would like to just begin with some history here. About April of last year, we saw the ABTEC contract, the same contract that led to the conviction of Senator Dean Skelos, pass the legislature. I, as a member of the Rules Committee, was not given the proper tools, as well as all the other legislators, to analyze that contract to see if there was any suspicion of wrongdoing. Since then, I, being the Rules Committee, along with other Democrats, have ruled against many of these contracts because they lack the proper transparency. In essence, I agree with Legislator Curran, but in essence, only 4 people in the Rules Committee, 4 Republican members in the Rules Committee, are approving these multi-million-dollar contracts. Rather than having 4 sets of eyes on one contract, I'd rather have 19 sets of eyes on a contract. This is what we're asking for, basic transparency. 19 eyes instead of 4 eyes. We need this level of transparency so that we do not end up spending money on unnecessary projects. And of course, let's focus on spending money on the projects which we need. Projects for transportation, projects for our young people, projects for mental health, the things that we really care about. So I'd like to thank my colleague for raising this important issue. We're not asking for much, but basic transparency. We, the Democrats here in Nassau County, will continue to fight for more transparency in our local government. Thank you very much.
Hi, Legislator Ellen Birnbaum from the 10th District, and I too, along with my colleagues, demand better transparency in our county government. At this point, we all feel frustration that our petitions that we worked very hard to get are being held up at the county attorney's office, and we should be able to get a referendum on the ballot in November to let the public decide whether or not there should be an independent inspector general petitions we're leaning towards. At this point, my colleague Laura Curran has introduced this piece of legislation to at least give a fair hearing, representation to all the resolutions that appear before the legislature. When we're talking about millions of dollars of contracts that are not overseen by an independent inspector general, we have to rely on testimony that appears before us. And at this point, 7 people are judging whether or not this is a good contract for Nassau County. Being in the minority, we don't have much of a say when it comes to these votes. Not being on the Rules Committee, I have 0 say on those particular issues. And I, for one, like to review all the resolutions that come before the legislature. I sit in at the Rules Committee, and I'm unable to have a vote on these particular items, of which are paramount to our government, the functioning of our everyday government. We really need to start having reforms, and this is one good way to do it. So I thank you all for coming and listening to us today.
Thank you very much, Mary Ann and Ellen. Well said. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Laura,
Yes.
yeah, earlier this year we saw a whole uproar over the $24,999 contract.
Yes.
Why the threshold so high on this at $3 million?
The threshold is high because, I mean, obviously we had to just come up with a number, and I didn't want to bog the legislature down with smaller contracts. But I thought for $3 million or more, that's a substantial amount of money, and that so every constituent should have their legislator having a voice.
You have concerns we're going to start seeing a lot of $2.99 million contracts?
We are concerned about that, and that's something that we will definitely look at. And if this again needs to be changed, then we'll take it from there.
Is there any one controversy perhaps, or any one thing that perhaps that triggered this whole $3 million?
If I had to point to one, I would look at AdTech. I know it was Sandy, and I know it was a tough time, and that people didn't want to get hung up in helping recover from Sandy, but that just put such a spotlight on the problem of corruption. And the fact that you only had 7 members voting on that, to me was a very stark reminder that something needed to be done. I mean, we really started looking at this first as a way to help root out corruption. And I think if you have more vetting of contracts and more pairs of eyes on them, and more people asking tough questions, the less possibility for this sort of scam.
Do you think some legislators actually prefer or enjoy not having the accountability of having to vote on things like AppTech, or say, I never voted for that, Splash, whatever it is?
Yes, I think so. I think it's easy to just say, it wasn't my problem, not my job. But, I mean, we're elected, put their trust in us, so we should be able to take those tough decisions. If we can't, then we shouldn't be in the business.
You know, this really seems like common sense, to be quite honest.
I think so.
The average person would say, so do you expect the public to go along with you on this?
I can't see why they wouldn't, frankly. Which is why I went out of my way to say this is not partisan for me. Because the Democrats, under the Democratic leadership, it was the same way.
But unfortunately, because the presiding officer has a tremendous amount of discretion, she has the ability to make sure that this is not even heard before the legislature. So, you know, you could ask the opinion of other legislators, but there is no real barometer to test them by because they refuse to put this on the calendar. This all goes back to the premise of no taxation without representation. The same reasons why people rebelled against the tax on tea, Boston Tea Party, and other things that led to the development of our great country, is the same reason why we are here asking that voters, people who care about this county, residents, get a chance to express their voice when it comes to these contracts that we frankly can't afford. We have all these outside council contracts that frankly speaking attorneys in the county attorney's office can do. But instead they're going to these politically connected law firms, and instead of having money going to the programs that we need to address mental health, the rising heroin epidemic, and other programs that we need to focus on, we're spending money on politically connected firms and other companies that we truly cannot afford.
And speaking of Tea Party, I did bring a cup of tea here as a prop. I don't quite know what to do with it, but here it is. Cheers.
Throw it in the harbor.
Yeah, right. Put it in the grass. You're very welcome. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.